Conflict zones don't just devastate the regions where fighting occurs, they send shockwaves across the entire global economy. When war breaks out, supply chains are disrupted, energy prices can spike, and investor confidence often drops. Key resources like oil, gas, and food may become scarce or more expensive, affecting countries far beyond the battlefield. Financial markets react quickly to uncertainty, and trade routes can be blocked or rerouted, increasing costs worldwide. In an interconnected world, a conflict in one region can trigger inflation, slow economic growth, and even push vulnerable economies into crisis, proving that no nation is truly isolated from the impacts of war. Today we will talk about how conflict zones trigger global economic crises. So before we start, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. 1. Introduction. Conflict zones are not isolated political or military problems. They are major economic shock generators in the modern world. In an era of globalization, where countries depend on each other for trade, energy, food, and financial stability, even a localized war can escalate into a global economic disturbance. The interconnected structure of supply chains, financial markets, and trade routes means that instability in one region can spread rapidly across continents. As a result, conflict zones often become the starting point of inflation spikes, recessions, shortages, and financial uncertainty worldwide. 2. Disruption of global supply chains. One of the most immediate and visible impacts of conflict zones is the breakdown of global supply chains. Modern industries rely on complex international production networks where raw materials, components, and finished goods cross multiple borders before reaching consumers. When conflict erupts in a key region, transportation routes become unsafe, factories shut down, and ports may stop operating entirely. This leads to delays in production and delivery, creating shortages of essential goods such as electronics, machinery, and medical supplies. For example, if a conflict disrupts a major shipping corridor or manufacturing hub, industries across the world experience bottlenecks that slow down production and increase costs. Over time, these disruptions reduce global economic efficiency and weaken growth. 3. Energy market instability and price shocks. Energy markets are among the most sensitive sectors affected by conflict zones, especially when the conflict occurs in regions rich in oil or natural gas. Many global economies depend heavily on energy imports, and even the anticipation of disruption can cause price volatility. When supply is reduced due to damaged infrastructure, sanctions, or blocked exports, global oil and gas prices rise sharply. Since energy is a fundamental input for transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, and household consumption, this price increase spreads throughout the entire economy. Higher fuel costs raise shipping expenses, increase production costs, and ultimately contribute to inflation. In extreme cases, sustained energy shocks can push countries into recession, particularly those heavily dependent on imported energy. 4. Food security and agricultural disruptions. Conflict zones also have a major impact on global food security. Many agricultural regions supply staple crops to international markets, and when war disrupts farming activities or export routes, global food availability declines. Farmland may be destroyed, irrigation systems damaged, and farmers forced to abandon production. At the same time, transportation disruptions prevent food exports from reaching importing countries. As supply decreases, food prices rise globally, hitting developing countries and low-income households the hardest. This can lead to malnutrition, social unrest, and increased poverty levels. Governments often struggle to stabilize food markets during such crises, especially when global grain reserves are already limited. 5. Financial market volatility and investor behavior. Financial markets react quickly to geopolitical instability, and conflict zones often trigger widespread uncertainty among investors. When war breaks out, investors typically move their capital away from risky markets and into safer assets such as gold, government bonds, or stable currencies. This sudden shift can cause stock markets to fall sharply, weaken emerging market currencies, and increase borrowing costs for developing economies. Countries that depend on foreign investment may experience capital flight, leading to liquidity shortages and financial instability. Over time, Prolonged conflict reduces investor confidence, making it harder for affected regions to recover economically and attract new investment. 6. Trade disruptions and rising global costs. International trade depends on stable shipping routes, predictable regulations, and secure infrastructure. Conflict zones interfere with all three. Maritime routes may become dangerous due to military activity, forcing ships to take longer alternative paths, increasing fuel consumption and delivery times. Insurance costs for shipping goods through high-risk areas also rise significantly. Additionally, border closures or sanctions can restrict exports and imports, reducing global trade volume. Export-oriented economies suffer revenue losses, while importing countries face higher prices and limited access to essential goods. These disruptions contribute to global inflation and reduce overall economic productivity. 7. Government debt, military spending, and economic strain conflict zones place heavy financial pressure on governments, both directly and indirectly. Countries involved in conflicts often increase military spending significantly, diverting funds away from infrastructure, education, and healthcare. At the same time, economic activity slows down, reducing tax revenue. This combination leads to rising budget deficits and increased borrowing. Governments may also need to fund refugee assistance, humanitarian relief, and reconstruction efforts, further straining public finances. In severe cases, prolonged conflict can push countries toward debt crises, which can then affect international financial institutions and global credit markets. 8. Human capital loss and migration pressures. The human cost of conflict also has deep economic consequences. Wars force millions of people to flee their homes, creating refugee flows and internal displacement. This disrupts labor markets, reduces productivity, and leads to a loss of skilled workers in affected regions. The brain drain caused by migration weakens long-term economic recovery. While host countries may benefit from an expanded labor force, they also face challenges such as pressure on housing, healthcare, education, and employment systems. These demographic shifts can reshape regional economies and create long-term economic imbalances. Conclusion. Conflict zones are powerful triggers of global economic crises due to the deep interconnectedness of today's world economy. They disrupt supply chains, destabilize energy and food markets, create financial uncertainty, and place enormous strain on government resources. The effects are not confined to the countries at war, but spread across the entire global system, influencing prices, trade, investment, and growth. Understanding these linkages highlights the importance of diplomatic conflict resolution, economic resilience planning, and international cooperation to reduce the risk of global economic instability caused by regional conflicts. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up. Leave a comment and click the button to subscribe.